Before we get into today's episode, I just wanted to go over a couple things that have happened since the recording until now. This episode was originally scheduled to air back in November. My brother had just passed the bar exam. Kayla was celebrating with him, and so we were not able to record together. We had already had this interview scheduled with Nichole, and so we definitely wanted to keep it going. We were so excited, and this is a really fantastic interview, and I'm excited for you guys to be able to hear it. Tragically, just a few short days after this interview, Nichole's brother passed away. Any reference to him in this podcast is he is alive, and our hearts go out to the Tovas family, and I really appreciate her doing this interview. Not She had no idea what was to come just a few short days after this. So out of respect for her and her family, we have waited to air this, and now some months past, we are really, really excited for you to hear her incredible insights and just really thank her for even being on the podcast in the first place. We hope you enjoy Friendeavor the podcast. Welcome to Friendeavor the podcast, the weekly podcast where we explore the highs and lows of friendship with your hosts, Danielle and Kayla.
As we journey through life, our friendships often evolve and change, ebb and flow, and sometimes even come to an end. Danielle and I are lifelong advocates for the power of friendship, and we are here to guide all of us through the many challenges and joys that come with building and maintaining strong, meaningful connections with those around us.
Join us each week as we deep dive into the intricacies of friendship, from navigating conflicts to fostering new relationships and everything in between. With insightful interviews, personal anecdotes, and expert advice, Friendeavor is the perfect podcast for anyone looking to strengthen their bonds with the people they love.
So, whether you are on the go, taking care of chores, or just settling in, get ready to explore the world of friendship on Friendeavor, the podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Friendeavor the podcast. It's me, your host, Danielle, without my lovely co-host, Kayla. We just found out that Brett, my brother, her husband, passed the bar exam, so she is not with us today. But it works out because we have our second interview of Friendeavor the podcast with my friend Nichole Williams. So welcome.
Hi, thank you for having me.
Thank you for agreeing to be on. I'm so glad this worked out with all the timing, and I've been really looking forward to this one. So before we jump into the conversation, could you tell us a little bit about your background, what field you work in, your family? Just give us the deets.
Absolutely. So I am in government compliance. So it's boring. It's as boring as it sounds. For a defense contractor in Rancho Cordova. And I've been there for almost 5 years. Before that, I worked with the government doing government audits. And I went to school at University of Washington in Seattle, got my degree in finance. I'm originally from Guam. Not a lot of people, well, people at the Rock know, but if your audience is a little wider, then I'm originally from Guam. I was born and raised there, by the way. So I left Guam when I was 19.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize you were that old when you left. Okay.
Came to California, got into a really bad car accident, and then had to move up to Seattle, and that's where I finished my schooling there. Then I moved down to LA for work, and then moved back up to the Bay Area. And a few years after that, I went to a little conference called West Coast Conference, and that's where I met Brian, my husband. So yeah, that's a little, and that's how I came to the Rock Church.
That's so awesome. Yeah, I knew a little bit about that, but I did not know the whole thing. So University of Washington didn't know that. They're having quite the football season this year. I don't know if you've heard anything about that, but they're on quite a streak. Well, that's super interesting. So we're just gonna go ahead and kick off. So as you may have seen on the title, listener, our topic this week is building friendships in a new environment. Now, Nichole, not only did you come from Guam, but since you've gotten married, you've come to a new location, you've had to move to different states. And so we're really interested to see your perspective about what it's like to make friends in a new environment, transitioning into new churches and stuff like that. So let's just kind of work backwards, if you're on board with that. We'll start with your most recent large transition, which is getting married. What was the transition like moving to a new church after getting married?
Yeah, so the church I came from was Fremont in Fremont, California. There's like about 80 people there. So going from 80 to about 1,000 is
Mm-hmm.
a pretty significant change
Yeah.
and, you know, a different environment altogether. And so, in small churches, everyone's kind of like a family. Everyone goes out to eat all the time. Everyone shows up at each other's houses,
Mm-hmm.
on the weekends. So it's a pretty tight knit group when you have just about 80 people and everyone's your friend, right?
You're right.
So coming to the Rock Church, I had friends who told me, just be yourself. And then a friend of mine, my pastor at the time had said, don't worry about it because he goes, just always remember this. You can't always please everybody.
That's so true.
And so I said, okay, I took, their advice. And I just went in thinking, you know what? I'm just going to be friendly to people. I'm just going to be friends with everybody. And that's what I had to tell myself um, in order to cope, I guess you could say, with that transition. And so I kind of just made sure that I was a part of some kind of ministry when I first got here. So I started in Sunday school because that's what I did back in Fremont. So I just jumped right in. And it was a lot easier before kids.
Yeah.
Um, because you would get invited out all the time,
Mm-hmm.
just people's houses. I mean, I remember your parents invited us over for Christmas one year, and people would just invite us after church, and so that was easier.
Mm-hmm.
But after kids, it was a lot more difficult.
I can imagine. I'm glad you brought that up because that's something we're getting into a little bit later. But because I hear a lot about how motherhood absolutely changes everything, and I don't want to jump ahead, but we're definitely going to come back to that. Um, the ministry aspect is so interesting to me because I have found that the people who are most successful, I wouldn't say necessarily exactly at the Rock Church because I'm sure it's like this in other places too, but that's my big transition to was coming here. But in the last 11 years, almost 12 years, I have seen that the people who become most successful in this new environment are the people who just dive in head first. So it's interesting to see that it was kind of the same for you.
Yes, and it keeps you busy
Mm-hmm.
because when you isolate yourself and you don't get involved, isolation isn't good for anybody. I mean, we
Right.
learned that out, with COVID. So just isolating yourself um, is pretty, in my opinion, spiritually pretty dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
So, it's just not something that I recommend. So I absolutely recommend jumping in, diving in where you can.
That's awesome. So with this specific transition into a new church family, what was the hardest part for you?
The hardest part came after Lincoln because it was still kind of new. I had established some friendships, but as a mom, that just the whole dynamic changed.
Mm-hmm.
Now it was like I'm trying to figure out who I was still. And of course, I went into motherhood completely naive. I did not plan well. Um, did not, and I'm a planner, and I was like, oh, it'll be okay. It, you know, we'll flow with it, we'll run
Yeah.
with it, and
We'll
nothing will
adjust. We'll
change.
adjust when we get there.
And nothing will change. And that was like, I laugh at myself now. I'm like, oh, your whole life changed. Your
Yeah.
whole perspective changed. So yeah, that was the hardest part. And the reason with that is because now you have this baby and you look around and you see, okay, I don't have family here.
Mm-hmm.
I came from a church where almost everyone was family. And even growing up on Guam, the church on Guam, my parents were the first converts. So almost everybody in that church was my family,
Mm-hmm.
pretty much. And so you go from that to, oh wow, I have no blood relatives. I don't have that support system that I would have had,
Yeah.
maybe at the Fremont Church or on Guam. So that actually kind of made me feel a little lonely and isolated. Um,
Yeah, I can definitely see how that would be a factor. I had a similar experience coming across the country. I was 16, so I didn't really realize it at the time, but there was a certain point that I realized, oh, it's just us. Thankfully, it wasn't
yeah,
just me, but it was just my family. And it's like, if so, like, it started off that the first big thing was like people in the church had to be my emergency contacts at school. They couldn't call my
oh,
grandma, because she was in Michigan. So like Amy Diaz becomes my emergency contact that if something were to ever happen to me, this woman that I barely know is now the person who's like in charge of me. Like it was such a weird
yeah.
thing, um, that integration. So yeah, I could totally see how that would be a difficult aspect to moving into a new environment. Um, so as a mother, but when you became a mother by having Lincoln, was there like, did you start feeling a connection with other mothers, or is that something that you had to carve out, or how did that, like, did you just by necessity make other friends in the nursery, or tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, actually, the nursery ministry um, was very helpful in establishing friendships with other moms. So, highly recommend that. If you're looking for mom friends, if you're a new mother, mom friends, go to the nursery. You're gonna find them.
You're all in the same boat.
Yes, you're all in the same boat, and you're learning together. And thank God, you like Carissa. Carissa had Adeline a month before I had Lincoln, so that was
Okay.
extremely helpful. And I think we were like the first ones. Her and I, we got, were pregnant at the same time with two of our children, almost like back to back. So it was nice to have her um, as a friend during that time and to experience all of those new things with her. So yeah, I think yeah, I had to carve out some friendships there for sure.
Okay. Um, so let's back up slightly. Before you had Lincoln and when you first got here, what were some ways that people made you feel welcome? If they made you feel welcome, if they did anybody like go out of their way, or and if you can't give specific examples, which is fine, what advice would you give to someone who's looking to try to be helpful to someone who's new in their environment?
A lot of people invited us out to eat, invited us to their homes, and so that was really really helpful. I highly recommend that. If there are new people, go up to them and invite them out, for coffee or for lunch, because it is really difficult coming into a new place, especially if they didn't come from a big church
Hmm.
and they come from a very small one. A big church can be pretty intimidating. I mean, when my
Absolutely.
parents when my parents came over, they were extremely intimidated by everything. And so, I'm grateful that your family, your parents had Unite going, and that
Hmm.
really kind of brought them in contact with other people, their age, and they weren't always relying on us for
Hmm.
friendship or fellowship. And yeah, and now, as a child, and I see my parents coming in at their age. Um, when I look back, I think, man, those few years were pretty rough, um, because they were trying to figure out, where they fit
Right.
into our church. They came from leadership, doing Bible studies and teaching and ministering. And my dad was oddly enough, the music director back home.
Really?
Yeah.
I
So
did not know that.
he was the music director back in Guam. So it's interesting how I'm now married to a music director.
Yeah, that is interesting. So I know you went through kind of like this twofold transition, maybe even threefold if you want to look at it this way, but you coming to the Rock Church, you becoming a mom, and then your parents coming. So you kind of had like three distinct phases. Um, and for this question, is there anywhere in that time, any time, it doesn't have to be one of those three phases, where you felt like you can point to a notable moment that it hit you like, I belong here. This is home. And What were your like feelings? Like what was the moment like that for you?
Can't say that I felt that there was any distinct time where I said, okay, I'm home. I can tell you that I feel content with where I am. So I don't know, like, you know, if other people are quicker to pick up on, like, okay, yes, yes, I'm home. I belong here. Um, don't get me wrong. Like, I believe the vision. We've grasped the vision of, the Rock Church helping people become, and, business mission and all of those different things. And we live it. But I can't say that I'm like, okay, I'm home. It's an interesting, it's interesting. I think it's an interesting dynamic because I want my kids to be here. I want them to grow up here. I look at them and I think, okay, they are home.
Mm-hmm.
Like their roots are going to be from here. Like they will
Right.
have Rock Church DNA in them, you know, um, and they will. And I mean, we live the vision and we believe in the vision, but I feel content being here. Um,
Okay.
yeah, I don't feel comfortable. I actually don't want to feel comfortable where
Mm-hmm.
I am because I feel like when you feel comfortable, you tend to not strive for, some of the goals that you want.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And I think that also not only are you showing God that you're okay with his wherever he, moves in your life, like if he wants to set you up for something else, but you're also willing. So not only are you like you won't fight him on it, it's like,
right,
your will be done. Really, truly,
exactly.
that's what I want more than anything, more than a specific my roots are so deep that I will get hurt if I get transplanted. More
Yes,
than pure like, oh, I'd never want to leave. This is incredible. Really, it all boils down to the will of God, right?
exactly. Yeah, and I mean, you said it so perfectly that you don't want to get so bogged down in like this is what I want and this is my home that yeah, it hurts when you have to pick up and leave. Or I guess I've changed so much in my life. I've had lots of changes in environment throughout my life. I went from Seattle to LA to Fremont to here, and I'm okay with change,
Mm-hmm.
whatever that looks like. So, yeah, to your point, like I won't fight God on it.
Right. In the immortal words of Brian Williams, I want the will of God to be done, but I really just want to be left alone. Kara and I
I don't know.
quote that all the time. That is that's our favorite. I really want the will of God to be done, but I really just want to be left alone. Okay, so let's back up. Like I said, we're gonna work backwards. So let's back up pre-marriage, pre um kids, pre-rock church. What advice would you give to someone who's making a life transition, whether that's moving countries? And I know that doesn't happen a lot often, but even if it's like just going away to college, which you did, or moving to a new city for a job, which you did, or moving to a new church, which you did. Um, what advice, like general advice, specific advice, would you give to people who are finding themselves in a new environment?
Great question. Um, Stick close to God. Pray. I think that I know it sounds so simple, but prayer has been the only thing that's kept me in this transition.
Wow.
Um, because it can feel extremely lonely, especially when you look around and you're like, okay, this person is family with this, and you know that some of these people have been raised together and you don't have that.
Mm-hmm.
Um, in those times, it can feel extremely lonely. And you just have to, lean on God for that. And I mean, I prayed for the friends that I have now. Um, there was a time where I was like, I don't know where I fit. I don't know who I fit with. And God, I want good and godly friends.
Mm-hmm.
And He's given me those. And he's giving me friends that I can trust, and who I invite over, and my kids play with. And it's in those moments in transition, you have to, I mean, just any time in life, really, prayer is the key. I know that sounds so simple. It's not revelatory,
No,
but
I think it's more so than we give it credit for. I think that people forget the power of prayer. I mean, I do. I do. I find myself in a spot where I'm like so overwhelmed, and then I hear a sermon about pray again, or the power of prayer, anything, and it's like, oh, that's right.
yeah,
My greatest tool is the thing that I've just got sitting on the shelf being dusty, when I mean, I cannot tell you, Nichole, how many times that I have, just done, just my general prayer life, whatever, but not really done a dedicated season of prayer or consecration,
right.
intercession, something like that for a specific event. And then I'm like, oh, I just got a reminder the power of that. And I go into that season and literally I can point to exact time frames
Yeah.
that the turnaround has been so quick because God is so faithful.
Oh
And
yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine being in new environments where it seems like you don't even know what's up from down. And
And there
what
were
a friend we
times
have in Jesus.
exactly, and there were dark times, you know, here, where I was like, God, what are you doing? Why are we here? And I would just I would just pray, and I would ask him, if there's something that you want me to learn in this season, like, show me now.
Yeah.
Tell me what it is, because I need to learn it like really quick so I can get out of here. Not like out of, Elk Grove or, the Rock Church or anything, but like out of this heaviness that I'm feeling, this darkness that
Right.
I'm feeling.
Hmm.
I'm not comfortable. I need to learn what you are wanting me to learn right
Right.
now. And so prayer is so powerful when you in any situation, but I highly recommend that. And if it's a great time, like especially if you don't have, a prayer life, that now's the time. If you're in transition, if you're moving to another place, like just stay close. Get yourself a notebook where you can write down all the prayers. Um, I have a habit of doing that, and I have literally like written down all the times and the dates when God has answered certain prayers, and it's been amazing. That's the biggest thing that I would say. And also, you're gonna feel so uncomfortable in a new place. Lean into the uncomfortableness of your situation. Don't run from it. Um, just lean into it. Like I said, like earlier, I would just jump in and, into different ministries. I had no idea what I was doing, especially like when, like Sunday school, there's like, the Sunday school in Fremont was like 10 kids, right? And they're all, these parents, their parents go to church, and then you jump into the Rock Church, and, then we had, you know, bus ministry.
Hmm.
So there were bus kids on there, and it was like 30, 40 kids, just crazy chaos, right?
Wild. Yeah.
Wild. And you're just like, oh my word, this is different. So, so yeah, and we just jump into it and go with the chaos, go with the flow, lean into the uncomfortableness. Don't run from it.
That's great. Uh, this I think is probably going to be the biggest point of our discussion today. This next question, um, because this is a lot of what I've built Friendeavor on the idea of, is that sometimes we learn life lessons about how we don't want to live our lives instead of what we do want to live. Like we see examples of people who have fallen and you're like, okay, I know I don't want to live like that. Or you see maybe an instance of in your job or anywhere poor leadership, like, okay, I don't want to do that. um so is there anything you've learned in any transition, any phase of life, uh anything that you've learned in the school of hard knocks or school or whatever, that would help someone avoid a traumatic or difficult situation down the road. That's kind of what I've built Friendeavor on, is that if I can help anyone from what I've learned in my life, this whole platform, the hours that I've spent doing everything, will be worth it to help someone. Um, so is there anything that comes to mind like that for you? And like I said, this is probably where we'll get into some interesting things, but
Yeah. So I've learned to personally throughout life listen more, speak less, and pray more.
mm-hmm,
Um, and observe, what's going on around you. What I've and the prayer thing is like the key. And I say that because um I look at some, younger ladies out there and within, the youth group and stuff like that. And it's like, I wish that I had had that kind of youth group
mm-hmm,
that we have now back home when I was growing up. And we didn't have that. Um, it wasn't a good environment. And so I think the Rock Church Youth Group is extremely, extremely blessed. And what I would say um, to that is, and I see things in with the perspective of being a mother and how I want my children
right,
to be treated, right? And I'm not, I don't gossip and I don't, listen to anything, but every now and then I'll hear certain things like, oh yeah, that person is not doing very well, and we don't want
right,
our
right,
to hang out with them and things like that. And I think, oh man, um, I want I want to be able to show love and compassion to whoever those kids who aren't doing well, you know, are, because I want my kids to see that mercy and compassion for those
right,
children, because just in case they do something
mm-hmm,
wrong or they start going down a wrong path, I would want another parent to step in and say, "Hey, I love you.
mm-hmm,
Lincoln, I love you, Mac. You're doing a good job." And so I think instead of pushing those, and I've just observed these things that are happening, right? I would want them, I would want other parents to bring their to bring my children close to them when they see, hey, you're going down the wrong path. Bring them close and say, I love you, and pray for, and to pray for them. Um, and to show them that mercy and compassion, because then my children will look at that and say, okay, I can stay here in church. I can trust other parents and other people, that if I
mm-hmm,
mess up, they're not going to judge me.
yeah,
They're going to love me. They're going to pray for me, and they're going to help me. And I think, yeah, I think that's kind of like what I wish I had growing up, because I did see that, growing up, the little comments here and there about, oh, wow, you're looking more like the world, kind of thing. And instead of, hey, sweetie, you're doing a good job. You're doing a great job. I love you and I'm praying for you. Words of encouragement versus words of judgment.
mm-hmm,
So um, that goes to speaking less, and then praying more for the people around you.
yeah, that's really good. I found, so we did an episode a few weeks ago about being an introvert and being an extrovert, and how it's really not one or the other. It's like a whole spectrum. It's who you're comfortable with, it's who you're not comfortable with. And even though I consider myself an extrovert, and I'm probably considered that way in other people's eyes too, in new environments, I find myself very quiet.
Yes.
Very, I wouldn't say reserved, because I can't, I would still have conversations with them, but primarily it's to watch. It's to observe what's going on around me to figure out what environment I'm in. What can I say? What can't I say? Who are these people? What do I need to know before I open my mouth? Not that I'm going to say anything bad, but just so that I know what's not, what's going to get taken off the rails or, whatever. So,
Yeah, of course.
um,
Yep.
the skill of observation in a new environment, and you can agree or disagree. I'm going to open up the floor for you to chime in here in a second, but is so integral, I think, in a new environment to observe. And like for you, for your kids, you're observing other families. Okay, we're not
Yeah.
doing that. We're not going there, or whatever. So observation in a new environment could really set you up for success, I would think.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. And that goes to like speaking, less and listening more, right?
Right, right.
When you're in a new environment, you, there's just so many different, personalities and people, and especially in this church, um, it's a bigger church. And so I think that's the key. And it can get, yeah, I go back to that, listen more, speak less, and pray
Mm-hmm.
more.
It's good stuff. So let's go back even farther in your timeline, if you will. Your transition to the United States in the world as it's getting smaller, if you will, through you know, transportation and all that kind of stuff, and new opportunities and missions opportunities and stuff like that. I feel like it's more frequent that people are maybe going on extended missions or coming to the United States, for school opportunities or whatever. As someone who has gone through that transition, um, what advice can you give for those of us who need to embrace people and bring them in to our community? Maybe not even so much the church, like the Rock Church specific, just in general. If you have someone new in your life that's from a different country, what's one way that, or a couple of ways, or whatever comes to mind, that we can embrace them and help make them successful in our new environment, in their new environment?
Yeah, a great way is to learn about their culture. Ask them, hey, take me, is there a restaurant around here that, serves your kind of food? Or, is there like a particular dish that you guys like to make, and invite them over and have them, if they want to make that dish
Mm-hmm.
and share a little bit of their culture. Ask them questions about like what are the differences in the culture that they see here in America versus, how they grew up. Because there are a lot of like different things. One, in our culture, when we see an elder, an aunt or an uncle, we go up to them and we kiss them. And that's out of respect. Um, Also, we let the elders sit if there's an open, if there's no open chair, we automatically just get up and let them, do that. We let them sit. And
Mm-hmm.
so I think in the here we don't, at least I haven't seen that. Um, so it is different. And in the Asian culture, I would say Asian people like, um, uh, they are gift givers. So they will give you a gift and you need to take it.
Okay.
So if they give you food, you need to take it. You say thank you.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to see different cultures, and I just ask them, like, what do you guys, you know, what do you think is respect in your culture? Like, how
Okay.
can we, um, how can I show you respect in your
Mm-hmm.
culture? And that'll go a long way.
Yeah.
If you have that conversation, because most people will be like, oh, you really want to know, you know,
Yeah.
and because most people don't ask those types of questions. So
Um, we here at Friendeavor have a it's really a tool. It's not anything more than like a graphic a tool, a guiding tool called the friendship pyramid. Um, the bottom layer the widest base is an acquaintance, and then you've got friendship, good friends, best friends, and then your spouse at the top. Obviously, the higher you get, the smaller it's going to be eventually to where you get to one person who's the top of your pyramid. And we don't really talk about the top so much here because that's not what kind of channel this is. But all of that to say, because of your college and coming here and churches and cities and whatever, is it difficult to maintain friendships that maybe would have been in like your good friend tier, and I use that with air quotes, your good friend tier, to maintain those kind of friendships as you've moved and transitioned? Because the formula for that, and since you're a genius, I can give you this very basic formula. But to me, people transition through the levels of the pyramid from time spent together and desire to spend time with each other. So if you want to spend a bunch of time with people, but you can't because of your proximity, then they're going to fall lower over time. If you have the desire and you can spend and you can spend time with each other, then you'll go higher. And then if you don't have the desire and you can't spend time, they'll stay an acquaintance. All that, a lot of explanation to say. In your seasons of transition, I would imagine it's been hard to maintain certain levels of friendship through those transitions.
It has, especially being a mom. It's going to be really difficult. You want to maintain friendships and you want to go out and have, a girls' day or, coffee and things like that. And there are a lot of, I would say there isn't a woman in the Rock Church that I'm friends with that I wouldn't want to, do that, have coffee with or spend time with. It's just with life in general, it gets unfortunately busy, and we have to schedule those times. So I was actually just thinking about, sending a text to some of the ladies like, hey, let's get together. And then I start thinking about, okay, wait, they have 3 kids, they have 4, I have 3. How are we going to do this? So it's kind of,
Yeah.
I'm in that mode where it's like, okay, childcare is a huge deal.
Yeah.
And we have to like figure out childcare first before we can even set a
Right.
date.
Right.
So it's just a little harder to do, especially when you're a mom.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, it's not like we don't want to. We just
Mhm.
have to think about childcare.
Yeah. It's funny. It's funny you say that because on the game night invitation I just sent out, at the
Yeah,
bottom I put a note, and it was
no
not.
kids.
Yeah. I try to do it nicely though, but I was
No,
like,
that's perfect.
I was telling Kara and my mom, I was like, it's not that I don't want their kids here. I want them to be able to come and
Right.
focus on hanging out. Like,
Yeah.
I'm not a parent, so I can't speak to that, but I know when, like, I think of a friend who's brought her daughter over and she can't even focus because the kid is always wants to be on her lap and like always wants to join in the game and whatever. And I'm like, I love that kid, but now the parent is not actually being able to hang out. So that's why I put on the bottom of the invitation, and
So
hopefully to give people that opportunity to figure out someone to watch their kids so they can come to game night. But yeah, that's why that's on there, is to try to
yeah.
give the moms a chance to join in.
So I absolutely 100% appreciate invitations like that. When is it? I think it's next third or Friday or something like that. Is
It's
it?
Saturday, this Saturday.
Oh, this Saturday.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I won't be able to come.
Okay.
Maybe I can
I'll
go. I
mark
don't
you as a no then.
know. I have to use my childcare wise.
Yeah,
Not that
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not to go to your party. I'm doing something in the morning, and my mom's gonna be watching the kids. Actually, no, she won't be watching the kids, so maybe I can go.
Well, let me
So
know.
there you go.
It's gonna be
Yeah, let
fun.
me know.
We
Oh,
kept
that's
it.
awesome.
We kept it. Good Lord, we kept it. And I'm a teacher, and I just said we kept it. We kept it a little bit of a smaller group this time to try to make
Yeah.
it so that it wasn't so crazy. But yeah, we would love it if you come. And listener, by the
No,
time you hear this episode, the game night will be over. So if you didn't get an invite, don't get offended. Uh, no, I'm just kidding. All right. I really only have one last question in my lineup, and then of course if we have anything else that we want to talk about, I would love to. But jumping back into motherhood, that game night transition was a perfect transition into this. You have 3 kids. One of them is under 1, correct? She's less than 1.
8 months,
Uh,
yeah.
okay, so as your family grew, did you find that you got more support or less support or the same amount of support from your friends, first of all? And second of all, how would you now, based off of your experience, support new mothers in friendship moving forward?
I definitely got more support, I feel. Well, I can't say that because every time, I think it just varied around when the kids were born. Um, yeah, I feel like I got the same amount of support. What really helps moms is that meal train. Let me tell you.
Oh, does it really? That's good to know.
Yes, because then they don't have to think about, having to feed their kids. I mean, that's another thing that they have to do, right?
Right.
When they have and making a meal is not as easy with 3 kids as it is with one or none.
Mm-hmm.
Especially if you're trying to heal from like a C-section, like I was. It just makes it a lot easier when you can do that. And check up on them. Send them a text message. Check up on moms. Tell them you're praying for them. I know I appreciate that.
Yeah.
Tell them you're praying for them. Tell them you're thinking of them. Send them like mom jokes. Kid jokes. Angel and I have this thing going where we send each other like videos about motherhood, and they're always funny. And
Yeah.
it's funny, and it keeps us laughing through it
Mm-hmm.
all. It keeps us reality, and that's all the things that you see on Instagram and those videos about motherhood and parenthood that are funny. It's true. Like your kid's having like a meltdown. Um, no rhyme or reason why. But yeah, that's keep texting them, pray for them. Don't call. We don't. I don't like people calling.
So yes for text, no for calls. I think
Yes.
that's a very Gen Z kind of thing. Don't call me. I don't want to call you. I don't want to talk to you. But yeah, it totally makes sense. A text is on your own time. I get that.
Definitely
Uh,
don't FaceTime.
you're like, I need at least 24 hours warning before a FaceTime.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
hilarious. All right. As we wrap up, again, I want to say thank you for joining us. But as we wrap up, are there any final thoughts that maybe came to your mind as we were talking today about friendship, life transitions, general advice, anything? The floor is yours. Take it away.
Ooh, general advice. Well, I see things through the lens of a mom now. So I guess I'm gonna say this to moms. Um, and our identity and this question came up. I think there was like one question that you had here, that you've heard that motherhood is such an overwhelming life change that it's easy to lose your identity in the process. And that really like resonated with me because I thought I was like, well, I actually never felt like I've lost my identity.
Okay.
And part of that is because my identity is in Christ. Now I was like kind of like confused with like my role.
Okay.
Like what am I supposed to do as a mother? What am I supposed to do as a friend, as a wife now that we have kids? All of those different things. But my identity is in Christ. And God has given me children, um, and they're a blessing. And in order to be a mother, I had to lose a part of myself. And that's just normal with any kind of transition.
Mm-hmm.
There is a change that has to happen. And transitions are changes, right?
Right.
So if you're moving to a different church, whether it be for college, marriage, etc., there's a part of you that you're going to lose. You're going to lose and not necessarily completely all together, but things are going to change. The friends back in Fremont that I would always hang out with when I got married, you know, I don't see them as much. I don't talk with them as much. Not that we're not friends. It's
Mm-hmm.
just by virtue of distance, I can't always go and see them. They can't always come see me. They're busy. So we text and we'll send pictures of, each other's kids, or say, hey, how are you doing? Get on a phone call, talk.
Right.
Um, and so all of those, all transitions will have changes and will have things that you're going to lose. And you need to be okay with that. Um, so be okay with losing a part of yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You're not really losing your identity, especially if you're a Christian. You're not going to be losing your identity in Christ. God is just moving you to a different place so that He can grow you, and that's
That's
how
good.
I look at transitions. Um, so my transition from singledom to marriage, I lost myself. I had to in order to be one and be
Mm-hmm.
married, right? And so when God gave me the role of being a mother, I didn't lose my identity in Christ. He just gave me a new responsibility that says, hey, you're going to have to lose something else too
Mm.
in order to be a mother. And it was, the loss of, you know, whatever I thought my body should be, whatever I thought my life should be, my career should be. My perspective in life completely changed being a mother. I To the point where I literally went to my boss and I said, I don't want to climb the corporate ladder. You just don't.
Wow.
And he was like stunned because every person who goes into corporate is like, they're like vying for the next
Yeah.
position and the next raise. And they'll throw you under the bus to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I went in to the job that I have now. And that was a God given job, completely 100% him. And I went in and I felt like they saw me as a threat. So years later, I went to my boss and I just said, look, I'm I'm a mom. First, I'm a wife and I'm a mother. I don't want to climb the corporate ladder. I just don't. Like, I no longer see this as a career. I see this as a job, and it's a tool um, to further, the kingdom and to further my family. And that's it.
Right.
Provide for my family. And he was absolutely stunned.
That's such a foreign concept to a lot
The
of,
people.
not just the secular world, sometimes in the church too, but yeah, I bet he was blown away.
He was very blown away, and he almost like teared up when I said it because he was like, "Thank you for saying that." And he goes, "Because you know, at the time, Lockheed Martin was trying to buy us." And he goes, um, and one of the reasons why I had gone to him to tell him that was like, I knew there was pressure on him because he may have, if Lockheed had bought us, I probably would have lost my job, and so would other people. So I went in and I told him, I said, hey, I have no desire to climb the corporate ladder. If they're going to lay me off, like, it's okay. I could be the first one to go or whatever. And I'm not saying that for any kind of, um, pat on the back or anything. It was more like, I know who I am in
Mm-hmm.
Christ. I know God has blessed me. He's going to take care of me.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And I, if I lost my job tomorrow, then I lose my job tomorrow. And I can tell you that 6 years, Lincoln is 6 years old. Yeah, he's six. I could tell you maybe 6, 7 years ago, I didn't have um that perspective. But now it's like, well, my kids are all that matters right now.
Mm-hmm.
Getting them to heaven, getting them saved, and being and ministering to them
Yeah.
is really all that matters right
That's so good. One of my favorite quotes is, the will of God will not take you where the grace of God will not cover you. And I feel like that's a perfect representation of it. God gave you that job, and his will guide you, me, everyone, and the place we need to go. And it's not going to be a shock to him when we get there. And it's not going to be like, surprise, I didn't know this was coming either. Like, the grace of God is going to be right there holding your hand every step of the way. And yeah, that's really an incredible witness of that kind of thing there, saying how your focus changed. That's really amazing. And I think that's gonna resonate with some people out there. Well, thank you so much for agreeing to be on the podcast. This was an incredible interview. I definitely think that you need to come back sometime and be another do another interview for us, because this was really incredible, and I appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate what you're doing, bringing these messages, to light. And I think, what you're doing is incredible and amazing.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
It's very sweet. All right, guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of Friendeavor, the podcast. Don't forget to rate, leave us a review, all that good stuff, and we will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening to this week's episode of Friendeavor, the podcast. Don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And if you enjoyed today's content, leave a review and share with a friend. You can find the show notes on our website, www.friendeavor.net, and in the description of this episode.
Friendship is a journey. It's an endeavor. We'll see you next time on Friendeavor.